Did the future #1 hero get caught in a love scandal?
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Was Drunk and Accidentally Slept with Momo movie. Before we start, please go support maximunZ for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Deku is a male. Sunrise. The gentle rays of the sun streamed into the president's room, a title she had earned 2 years ago when her classmates elected the class representatives. So many years in office had given her experience in leadership, perseverance, but above all, in setting an example. Not only to those in her class, but to anyone who knew her. She was an outstanding student and highly esteemed among the teachers and students who attended the most important academy in Japan. But lately, due to personal issues, she hadn't been doing very well, personal problems that had left her exhausted. What problems could she possibly have? Everyone loved her, appreciated her, and besides, she was financially secure. Well, everyone loved her except the one she loved. She began to wake up, opening her eyes. The first thing she thought was what a headache. The only thing she remembered from last night was that she had a party where she thought she had drunk more than she should have. Suddenly she thought, that's right, I got drunk. With a sad look, she began to remember the reason why she had drunk more than she should have. That's right, it was all she could manage to say. She shifted a little to get comfortable. She really didn't want to get up. She felt tired, but also had a pain in her heart, and let's not forget a migraine. But as she moved, she noticed something beside her. There was someone next to her. She knew this when she saw a silhouette covered by the sheets, something that surprised a dark-haired woman. How strange, she thought. She had just woken up, so she wasn't thinking so clearly. For her it was inconceivable that someone was sleeping in her bed. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. I must still be dreaming. Looking at the mound next to her. Even more importantly, where were her pajamas? She looked under the sheets and to her bad surprise, she was completely naked. She wanted to scream, but it would make too much of a scene, so she preferred to keep her scream inside. She never slept without her pajamas. She couldn't. It was uncomfortable for her to move around with her large attributes free, so she had to have her pajamas on to be able to sleep peacefully. My whole body hurts, she realized when she tried to move, more precisely in her hexual organ as she called it. She began to think nervously, trying to remember what the hell happened last night. While she was trying to remember, it should be remembered that she had a terrible migraine, so it was difficult for her. What was next to her, and she in the bed began to move, scaring the dark-haired woman even more. It can't be, she thought as she saw a strand of green hair appear. Panic gripped her. There was no doubt who it was. It was one of her colleagues, one of the big three, and one of the most intelligent. According to the news, one of the candidates to be the next symbol of peace. Midoriya, the dark-haired girl said, frightened. Finally, she showed her face, getting out of bed with her hair disheveled, drool dripping from her mouth, a look of horror on her face, and half-closed eyes, looking all around. What? This isn't my room, he said, looking around in confusion. My head hurts. It was clear that the green-haired girl was going through the same thing as her. She noticed that he wasn't wearing a shirt, adding to her fears. Rozu looking at her terrified. What's wrong? Why am I here? Why am I here? Blushing at the sight of his naked friend. And why are you naked? She realized she was still naked, so out of shame and embarrassment, she covered herself with her sheets. I should ask the same thing, she said sadly. I can't remember anything, he said, clutching his head in pain. I glanced to the side at a trash can, expecting the worst, and yes, I found what I didn't want to find. Rozu, we had looking in terror at what was in the basket. The dark-haired woman finished the sentence. Looking at the clues, it's the only explanation for why we're in this situation. You protected yourself, right? Thank goodness I had a moment of clarity to put on the condom. He looked sadly away. Very well, get out. Taking his clothes. But, I still want to know what happened. She watched as the dark-haired woman got dressed. There's no time, it's still early. If someone saw us like this, we'd each remember it later, and in the end we'd laugh about one more anecdote. Why, you're right. Getting up and starting to get dressed. The two of them were trying to remember why they ended up in this situation. They knew they had had a party, a crazy one from what it looked like, but what happened in the middle of it all? Well, I'm going. Heading towards the door. Midoriya. Stopping the green-haired boy with her shout before he could leave. I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone. Of course, smiling at him. See you, thanks for everything. I feel like I enjoyed what we did. See you leaving. The one she least expected, but she also had a feeling she was having a good time, a good feeling, but even so, it wasn't right. She understood he was involved with a certain brunette. Damn it, the dark-haired woman grumbled. Another problem. Disillusionment. The days passed for the young aspiring heroes, and vague memories of that night surfaced in the dark-haired girl. Can it really be that hard for me to remember? She thought, annoyed. Had she drunk so much alcohol that her memories were so hazy? She needed help with such a Herculean task. But what could she say? Ask for help remembering why she woke up naked with a certain green-haired girl? What would people think of her? Just some tramp who sleeps with whoever she comes across, she thought. Damn Momo, is something wrong? If anyone knew her well, it was her best friend, Jirou Kayaka, with whom she had a great and strong relationship that lasted for years. It's nothing, I'm just a little tired, that's all, she said before continuing to eat. The cafeteria, a place where you could take a well-deserved break from all the mortal classes of Eraser, and you could eat to your heart's content thanks to the delicious food they served there. You've been acting a bit strange lately, you can count on me for anything, she said, smiling. I know, Kayaka, you always have, she said, smiling. The truth is. Wait, look who's going there, interrupting her friend. His gaze shifted towards Midoriya, who was standing with his tray waiting for his food in the long line of waiting students. Momo wasn't upset with the green-haired boy. She realized that he too had fallen prey to the lust caused by the excess alcohol that night. It bothered her that he carried on as if nothing had happened, as if what happened was over. But it's better this way, she thought. If it was an accident, we don't have to make too much of it. But her attitude intrigued her, and something else reminded her that they had done something very bad. He's very handsome, his friend said, blushing as the green-haired boy walked by. He's taller now, isn't he? Maybe, she said with a forced smile. When the green-haired boy was right in front of them, he noticed they were there, looked at them and. Good morning, girl, smiling as only he knows how, and going to sit down. A burning sensation spread through Momo's chest. What is this? She thought undoubtedly, her classmate was admirable. Good grades, excellent performance, one of the big three at UA, and a candidate to become a symbol of peace in the future. He was undeniably handsome. His attitude had always been humble, and although he was very shy at first and had trouble talking to women, he began to mature and overcome that. Now he was a mature and responsible person, not to mention handsome, with a fan club inside and outside the academy. He was quite a catch. But he also had a well-built body. How did she know this? Well, she saw his bare torso in all its glory. Momo, what's wrong? You're red, looking at her strangely. Don't tell me you like that he greeted us, she said, the last part somewhat annoyed. And not at all, she said nervously, I could never like Midoriya. Well, I'll believe you, she said, smiling. Don't you find it strange that he eats alone? She asked, looking at the green-haired boy. That's right, she thought. They always saw him with Uraraka and Lita, but this time he was alone, which caught the attention of the two of them. You're right, said the dark-haired woman. How strange, maybe they. She stopped abruptly. Momo? I asked, surprised and looking at the cause. Oh, is that it? Seeing that was the worst thing for Momo. She couldn't get used to the fact of seeing who the raven-haired girl was in love with. She was in a relationship and she couldn't yet see and accept that. How are you feeling? The purple-haired girl asked. I was so close to telling him that, damn it, she said sadly. I'm a coward. But things happen for a reason, right? Maybe it was for the best, he said, trying to make her feel better. And precisely with her, she said, holding back her tears. Shoto Todoroki, son of the current number one and one of the big three, had recently formalized a relationship, something that pleased many and disappointed many others. Momo was in that latter group. I never expected him to have anything with Itsuka Kendo, Jirou said. And sudden, she added mentally. She would never have expected or imagined it, although Kendo was one of the most intelligent and beautiful girls in the academy, so she wasn't surprised in that sense. And to add to that, a kiss had made them say goodbye and sit down with their respective classmates, Kendo with Class B and Shoto with Midoriya. Just what I needed, he thought. Just thinking about the fact that the green-haired boy might say something about what had happened terrified him, even more so if he said something related to the bi-colored boy. Would you come with me to the classroom? I don't want to be here anymore, she said sadly. Sure, let's go, accompanying her friend. Izawa's class was the last one on Fridays. Everyone waited for the last second that separated them from finishing the day and starting the weekend. Alright, before we finish, you'll need to do a group project. I'll select the pairs based on different factors, the teacher said with his typical humor. You'll write the stories of heroes from different countries that I'll assign to you. I'll call a pair and you'll come and collect your materials. Okay, Tsuyu and Ajiro, he called to the children. Momo prayed that she wouldn't be assigned to two particular people. She hoped that luck would be on her side this time. Next up, Yaoi Rozu, and looking at a sheet of paper, Midoriya Izuku. Damn luck, he thought, with a certain annoyance that he couldn't express in public. He didn't want to do it with him, so he looked for some legal loophole to prevent it. But sensei, it's not for nothing, but Midoriya and I are at the top of the class in terms of grades, shouldn't we go with someone who needs it more? He said from his desk. That's right, sensei, the green-haired boy seconded the motion. That's true, but Yaoi Rozu, in heroic history, your performance dropped, so I thought you should be with Midoriya so he can help you recover, she said before speaking to the class. I want this work for next week, you can all go now. The dark-haired woman had no choice but to sigh in defeat. It's just homework, what could possibly go wrong? Task. How had he found himself in this situation? Right, homework. The dark-haired girl was waiting at the green-haired boy's door with her books and notes so she could finish their homework as soon as possible. She was grateful it wasn't in her bedroom as it would bring back memories of what had happened a few days ago. It's just homework, she thought, although she still couldn't accept why she needed his help. She was number one academically speaking, her grades were impeccable. But if there was one thing she couldn't deny, it was that lately she hadn't been doing well. The sudden clarification of the romance between her platonic love and the president of Class B had distracted her from her schoolwork and she had had a couple of problems maintaining her high grades. So she wasn't going to waste the opportunity to bounce back even if it meant doing it with her partner who had recently had Hex. She was standing in front of the door, she had already knocked and a voice told her to wait. Yaoi Rozu, the green-haired man said, opening the door, you can come in. Thank you, entering would be. I've been preparing the place, make yourself comfortable, she said. The green-haired boy's room had changed. She hadn't been in it since the room competition they had in their first year. There weren't as many Almight things anymore. He had one or two posters, but it wasn't comparable to that time. She was surprised that he was tidy. She understood that men, especially in their youth, tended to be more disorganized, but it seemed that not all of them were like that. She understood that it is bad to generalize many times. If you want, you can sit at my desk, I'll be in my bed, she said, pouring tea into some glasses. Thank you very much, she said, going to sit down. Chivalry was the word that crossed his mind, even if he didn't want to admit it. His altruism was striking, and it wasn't just with girls. He cared about others being better off than himself. If necessary, he would put himself last and go without so that others could benefit, something admirable. What am I thinking? He said, mentally shaking his head. Here's your tea, leaving it on his table. Thank you, he said in a serious tone. Are you ready? We've been assigned the heroic history of the USA. Opening her book, the first question is, how was society restructured in the early years after the appearance of Quirks? The minutes passed and progressed quickly, as expected from the best students at UA, but while the freckled boy read, Momo took a few moments to observe the room more closely. She was surprised to see a shelf with many books, most of which she knew. I didn't know I had those tastes, she thought. She didn't know anyone besides Todoroki who was an avid reader, and she couldn't even talk about books with her best friend, so finding a fellow reader thrilled her. Well, how about we take a break? He said, getting up. Would you like some more tea? That sounds good to me, and if you please, extending. While the green-haired man continued serving, she still couldn't understand his attitude, acting as if nothing had happened after what they had done and how he had treated her afterwards. She knew and understood that he was a good person, but she didn't know to what extent. For her, it was something more complicated. She felt strange, and if it wasn't for the task, she seriously doubted if she would have gone for any other reason. And the green-haired man said as he served, were you able to remember anything? If you could be more specific, he said, looking at his book so as not to look at the freckled boy. You know why that happened that night, he said as he approached with the glasses. I don't see why I have to tell you, she said seriously. As far as I know, we both promised to try to remember what happened, she said, sitting down on her bed. I know at least what happened on my side, or well, part of it. The dark-haired girl glanced at him out of the corner of her eye, noticing the sad look that had appeared on the green-haired boy's face. Without asking, the green-haired boy proceeded to speak. To sum it up, I found out something I didn't want to find out, or rather I didn't want to accept it, and it seems that's why I drank more than I should have, laughing nervously. What? The same as me, she thought in surprise. Who would have known that the green-haired boy, the hero who withstood millions of blows from Nomus and the League of Villains, had a heart problem? Or so she thought. Now that she thought about it, Uraraka and Iida had made their romance official at the same time as Todoroki and Kendo. The questions were being answered. He felt a great weight in his heart. The green-haired boy had confided that in him, and they were in the same boat, so he thought it best to trust him. He didn't seem like the type to divulge secrets. I'll tell you, she said, closing her book. I didn't want to accept anything either, and when I found out, I fell apart. Basically, I liked it. Todoroki, the green-haired boy interrupted. Huh? She said, surprised. How did you? You may be the smartest, but you're very obvious about these things, she said, laughing. Shut up, she said, pouting. Did he say anything to you? She asked nervously. No, she said quickly. But seeing how hopelessly in love you were with him, I couldn't stop thinking about what that idiot was missing out on, she said with complete normality. The blush had formed on her face. Did the green-haired boy hold her in such high esteem? Or was it something more? Although I see you're still drooling over him, she said before taking a sip of tea, he's already in a relationship and very happy, you should give up. That comment made the dark-haired girl a little angry. How did you give up? He said without hesitation. I'm just giving them their due, he said seriously. But Uraraka and Lita are your friends, she said, looking at him. I don't want to bother you, he said, sounding annoyed. At least I'm not still thinking about her as if I have a chance. Things don't work that way. Running away from your feelings is worse, she said, more annoyed. And what did you do? You ran away too. It seems you never had the courage to confess your feelings to her. At least, he said, letting go of his annoyance to give a sad look. I was honest with her, he said until his annoyance returned. I was clear. I'm not an idiot anymore. Life goes on, and if you, little princess, continue with your fairy tales, that's not my problem. Annoyed was an understatement to express what Momo felt, who is he to judge me? She thought, she was furious, she never expected this side of the green-haired boy. Ready, grabbing her things furiously, we'll finish the job separately, good night. She grabbed the door handle, but the green-haired boy grabbed her wrist. I'm sorry, she said sadly, I went a little too far. A little? She said, annoyed. No one has ever spoken to me like that before. Who do you think you are? All she could feel was being pulled towards the green-haired boy and his lips beginning to kiss hers. Surprised, she wanted to pull away for a few seconds, but that was replaced by something she didn't understand. Maybe it was warmth. Peace. Surrendering, she became prey to lust, and without further resistance, she too succumbed and began kissing the green-haired boy. Small flashbacks came to their minds of that night when their bodies had accidentally joined, and from that moment on, unconsciously, they hadn't stopped thinking about each other. Perhaps they both wanted to escape everything, their companions and the present, so they continued without resistance. Each time the kisses became more passionate, followed by caresses, until the green-haired man lay down next to her on her bed, throwing away all the books that were there and continuing with the act. Lust clouded their minds, but there was only one thing on their minds. How had he found himself in this situation? Right, homework? Feelings? Weeks passed, their meetings became more frequent and with extreme care to avoid being discovered. They spent entire nights together, using each other's bodies as a refuge, an escape from reality, the harsh and cruel reality. Their hearts were broken, but they tried to heal their wounds, even if only a little, through each other's company. They felt guilty. Using someone else's body as an escape isn't exactly heroic. It was wrong, but it was all they had. They hadn't reached any kind of agreement, they hadn't done anything as cliché as that. When they needed each other, when they wanted to forget, they would meet in one of their rooms, and, without saying anything more, they would begin without any difficulty. The raven-haired woman couldn't believe how the situation had escalated to this point. It was unthinkable that she would participate in these activities. Her upbringing and common sense wouldn't have allowed her to use her body like this, for such a selfish and sordid purpose. But her pain was stronger than all of that. Her heart was broken, and the one who had been the love of her life until then had gone his own way without her, choosing someone else. It was painful, but there she was, using him. That was the perfect word to describe her attitude and actions. If she wanted to forget all that pain, it was what she had to do. The green-haired boy, the next symbol of peace, one of the big three currently and, according to statisticians and experts, one of the young people with the most future and potential, there he was using his partner to escape, in the most selfish and disgusting way. He hated himself, he couldn't believe what he had fallen into, he couldn't forget Uraraka, that was what hurt him the most, and he wished with his soul that he could forget her. Deciding that using the vice president's body was an option, at least to forget for a while, that his mind would take him far away from there, even if it was a lie. Even though they were used, they felt warm. It's like when it starts to rain heavily and without stopping, and you have to find a place to take shelter and feel a little warmth. They didn't know it, but they understood each other quite well, and they got along well. After Hex, they would talk about their lives and their daily routines, perhaps to avoid feeling so guilty towards each other, but a kind of friendship had formed, somewhat bizarre, but it worked. There was the green-haired boy, who was looking out the window in his bed, only covered by his sheets, all his clothes were scattered all over the place, he was looking thoughtfully at the starry sky of the city. Change that pathetic face, the dark-haired woman said, coming out of the bathroom with a towel. I'm sorry, I was staring at the sky and thinking, she said without taking her eyes off the sky. If you want to tell me, I'm all ears, drying his long, silky black hair with the towel. It's not important, come here, he said, stepping aside and gently tapping the empty space. The raven-haired girl finished drying off and lay down next to the green-haired boy. Why does it always have to be in my room? He said, putting his arm around the brunette's naked body. I remind you that I have a roommate with a quirk that allows her to hear everything as a neighbor, she said, settling into bed. Good point, although they can hear us here too, he said, adjusting himself so they were both comfortable. It's not the same, although we run a risk in both rooms, but we are very careful laughing. Silence made its presence felt, but it wasn't an annoying silence, they didn't know it, but in each other's company they felt comfortable, complete, they could stay like this for a long time. What happened in these weeks were able to grow a bond that they didn't know was germinating. But the silence was for another reason, at least on the part of the green-haired boy. He thought about everything, many times he listened to his wise conscience, that conscience that warned him and urged him to be the hero he was, but in these cases, he kept it well hidden. He did not want to hear the obvious, what he knew he was going to say, but he could not stand it anymore. I'm sorry, he said seriously, still hugging the raven-haired girl. Huh? She said, intrigued. I know what we're doing isn't right, he continued. The raven-haired woman didn't want to accept it or talk about it. She had the same unease. It seemed as if their consciences had agreed to make him see that what they were doing was wrong. I know, it's not good, he said listlessly. What I mean is, I don't want you to think I'm a pervert, it's just that I'm getting nervous. He didn't know what to say or what excuse to make. I know that, she said, turning to face him. You're not the only one who feels guilty. Looking down, she continued, I know it sounds awful, and it's not right, but her eyes began to water. I don't know how can I forget this pain. I can't let it go no matter how hard I try. I hate this feeling, I'm so sorry, really, she said, starting to cry. If you don't want to, let's end it. She couldn't finish speaking when the green-haired boy kissed her forehead. It wasn't like those lustful kisses that incited desire, but a compassionate kiss, a tender kiss, a kiss that exuded security. We're both in the same boat, let's forget together, looking into her eyes. She couldn't explain it, but she felt safe in his arms, in his words, in the two learned to appreciate each other, although they had a secret and it all started as a mistake. The future that awaited them was much better than the present, of course they didn't know it yet. Midoriya, she looked at him, blushing slightly. I'll help you forget him, until we finish the third year, then we each go our separate ways, he said, settling back into bed. It was a good plan, each one was going to help the other in helping, without needing to put feelings in between, the dark-haired woman agreed, there was nothing more to add. But she felt a restlessness in her chest, she wasn't sure and didn't know why, but it was necessary, and it had to be done this way. That seems like the right thing to do, until we finish the academy, then we'll each go our separate ways, he said in a neutral tone. Okay, let's go to sleep, hugging her and closing his eyes. I didn't know how this was going to end, I didn't want to risk anything, but I was going to forget about the bicolor at all costs. You don't win without taking risks. But a thought echoed in their heads that wouldn't let them sleep so easily, something as terrifying as it was real and feasible. And what if afterwards I can't forget you? Astonishment. The winner of this year's sports festival is Midoriya Izuku. President Mick announced forcefully. The crowd went wild, wild shouts of victory could be heard throughout the stadium, the platform was destroyed, smoke from explosions came out from all sides, revealing that the fight that took place there was spectacular. The green-haired man could be seen in the middle of the platform, his jacket and shirt torn, revealing his muscular torso, with scrapes and blood all over his body. Even so, with great effort, he raised his right fist in a sign of victory. A few meters away from him, a blond man lay unconscious on the platform. Incredible, Jirou said, sitting in the stands. That was incredible, she said, her eyes wide and a little flushed. That's right, she thought, while she had the same expression as all her companions, of amazement at the titanic fight carried out by her two companions. You did it, she said with a great burning in her chest, that made her blush a little. It's decided, Jirou said, intriguing her friend who was next to her. I'm going to confess to Midoriya. Huh? She exclaimed in her head, her eyes widening in surprise at what her best friend had said. She knew she liked her, but she had never said anything with such determination. She knew she was going to do it. When she set her mind to something, she wasn't going to let it go until she got it. Okay, it doesn't bother me at all, Midoriya and I aren't anything, she suddenly thought, but something about her wasn't right. On one hand, she wanted to be happy for her friend. She was finally going to confess to the boy she'd always liked. But on the other hand, she was annoyed. She didn't know why she felt this way, since there wasn't any kind of bond between her and Midoriya. As awful as it sounded, they were just using each other. She wanted to make sure she got rid of this annoyance she felt, at all costs. I'm happy for you, Kayaka, she said, smiling at her. I didn't know what to think, but there were other things to think about, for example that she had lost. This year it was decided to have boys against boys and girls against girls, to make it more even. Well, Midoriya beat Kaminari, Iida, Todoroki, and in an epic final, he beat Bakugo in a rather personal battle. While Momo fought very well, beating Tsuyu, Ibara, and Uraraka in the semi-final. I don't know why she was more excited in that fight. Unfortunately, in the final she lost against Kendo, in a battle that she didn't want to have that day, but that unfortunately for her happened. He gave it his all, but the Deity was still superior. He lost to her in every way. Later that night. She was in her room that night, thinking about everything that had happened during the day, about her defeat. She was sad but furious. She didn't like the idea of losing and even less so against her. I'll confess to Midoriya was what quickly came to her head. Why was she thinking about that? Because her mind always took her to the same place. She felt terrible, with a jumble of thoughts in her head that made her feel like the worst person. While she was in her own world, she felt small taps on the window, warning that someone was there, which surprised her, and creating a baseball bat, she stealthily approached, forcefully opening the door and preparing for an attack. "Good evening, miss," smiled the green-haired man. Midoriya with a bat in her hands, surprised by the visit of the green-haired boy. "What are you doing here?" "I was discharged and wanted to come visit you." "I thought you'd be blaming yourself and putting yourself down all night," she said, approaching him. "From what I can see, that's exactly what you're doing." How did he know? That's what she thought when he said that. Did he really know her that well? It hadn't been long since they started meeting, but it was true they barely knew each other. They knew what the other was thinking, for better or for worse, that bond was there and it wasn't going to disappear so easily. "And no, it's not like that," she said, looking away, embarrassed and slightly blushing. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about all of this," but she was interrupted by a kiss from the green-haired boy. "You were great today," she said, pulling away from the kiss and smiling at him. "Don't blame yourself for everything. If you gave it your all, you have nothing to reproach yourself for." She didn't know how she did it, but he was one of the few people who made her feel good, feel capable, feel like she could conquer the world if she set her mind to it. His words of encouragement towards her made her fly. "Can I lie down?" "I'm a little tired," he said, approaching and throwing himself onto the bed. "You gave Uraraka a good beating, should I ask?" he asked, glancing at her sideways. I only know that I had to win at all costs, it's not my fault." Looking away, making the green-haired boy laugh. "I understand," he said, sitting on the bed. "I know I said it to make you feel better, but it's true, you were fantastic today." He looked at her, blushing. "You're fantastic." Thank you," she stammered, blushing. But she was better. "She beat me, she beats me at everything. She's beautiful, intelligent, and she's with her eyes moistening." Without realizing it, she felt the green-haired boy hugging her. Those feelings of guilt and frustration vanished, now there was only calm. "Stop it," he said, hugging her. "You're better than her, completely. This is coming from someone who knows everything about you and knows who you are. You have no idea of your potential yet, but you must unleash it and rise to the top. If you keep blaming yourself for everything and putting yourself down, you'll never improve." He looked at her while still hugging her. "I believe in you. I'm your #1 fan," he said, smiling tenderly at her. What is this? She thought, all her fears dissipated, now it was just the two of them. It seemed as if the world had stopped. She didn't want to admit it or accept it, but something was growing inside her, a feeling towards the green-haired boy. She couldn't believe there was a person on earth who made her feel like this. "By the way, breaking away from the hug, Jirou invited me out, can you believe it?" Smiling innocently. "That's right, that issue still needed to be resolved." "Appointment. Will this one fit me better? Or this one?" Jirou said, holding up some clothes. "That one's fine," said the raven-haired girl listlessly. There she was, helping her friend choose clothes for her upcoming date with the great Midoriya Izuku. "Is something wrong?" "You're acting strange," the purple-haired girl asked. "And no, nothing, it's just I'm exhausted, that's all," she said, forcing a smile. She should be happy for her friend, so happy that she wanted a date with the green-haired boy. She wanted to be happy, for her and with her, but something wasn't right. But she shouldn't tell her that. It was her day, and she wasn't going to ruin it. "I understand that you're sad, that you can't forget Todoroki, maybe you're thinking, everyone is dating except me, you know you're my best friend, and I'll never leave you alone," she said, trying to cheer up her friend. "Why, you're right, thank you for that," again faking a smile, because she knew that wasn't why she was sad. There are only a few minutes left, I need to get ready," she said, getting nervous. "I'll let you get ready, I'm going to my room, have a good day," she said, grabbing the door, and I don't know why it hurt her more to say that last part. A few minutes later. She glanced at the clock. It wasn't time for their date yet. She was still lost in thought, wondering why she felt this way. The whole day had been the same, a bitter ache in her chest. Maybe she was jealous of her closest friend. I don't think so, she thought. She always talked about boys, and I never felt like this. Maybe, like her friend said, maybe it's like she said, that I feel bad because everyone else is dating and falling in love, and I'm still alone. She felt a pang of sadness at this last thought, but what mattered least to her was what others were doing. She was happy for her friends and classmates, but she didn't think that was the reason either. She gave up trying to figure out what was wrong until she felt the urge to go get a drink in the kitchen. If she was lucky, they would have already left and she wouldn't see them again. I suppose that would be worse. I calmly walked to the elevators and going down to the room where I greet a couple of my colleagues who were passing by until I get to the kitchen and take my longed-for glass of water. She finished drinking it, leaving the kitchen, wishing she had stayed in there longer as she ran into the green-haired boy, well-dressed and ready for their date. Good evening, Vice President smiling at her. Why are you smiling at me? She thought, annoyed. Good night, Midoriya, he said, looking away. It's my first date with someone, I'm a little nervous, he said innocently, making the raven-haired girl a little annoyed. I see, I hope you have fun with a touch of sarcasm. Are you okay? You seem strange, he asked curiously. Nothing's wrong with me, besides, I don't owe you any explanations, she said, somewhat annoyed. When you talk like that, it's because something's wrong, he said seriously. Since when do you care? She said, glaring at him. Isn't it late for your date? I'm still waiting for her, I said, looking at the stairs, and to answer your question I always have been, staring at her. Why did you accept? He asked. Well, I couldn't refuse, that's all. Jirou and I are friends, and it made me feel bad to refuse him, she said, laughing. She didn't know why that last thought comforted her. At that moment she realized something. Could it be I'm like this because of him? She hadn't thought of it that way, but did she like the green-haired boy? No, it's not like that, we just used each other, we said there wouldn't be any feelings involved, she thought, terrified. Hello, Earth to Momo, said the green-haired boy. Huh? He exclaimed, overexcited. And never mind, do whatever you want, he said with his arms crossed in obvious discomfort. Momo, the green-haired boy wanted to say something to her before the purple-haired girl appeared. I'm ready, I'm looking at the scene, what's wrong with you two? She said, intrigued. Ayaka, she said, surprised. Nothing, I was just telling this boy to take care of you. She laughed nervously and hit the green-haired boy's shoulder quite hard. Ouch, complained the freckled boy. The blow definitely had a little extra force. Have a good trip, she said, heading back to the elevator. How pleasant the vice president is, he said, still with his hand on her shoulder. Shall we go? Yes, replied the purple-haired girl, following him to the exit. A few minutes later. Now it was time to feel hungry. He had locked himself in his room all this time, thinking about the date between those two and that a meteorite would fall on the green-haired boy, although he didn't want that last part, well, a small one at least. Back downstairs I went to the kitchen. It was rather late, so my companions were already in their respective rooms and peace was felt throughout the place. She opened the kitchen door. It seemed to be a day of unfortunate encounters. Upon encountering Todoroki Shoto, her longtime platonic love, he was drinking a glass of water, making the raven-haired girl nervous. He was the last person she wanted to meet. Good night, said the bi-colored one. Good evening, Todoroki, the raven-haired girl replied. It's strange to see you at this hour, I commented, trying to start a conversation. I was a little hungry, so I came down for something. You're not seen around here much this late, she said, intrigued. I guess I just wanted a glass of water, he said, moving his glass and looking strangely melancholic. I see walking towards the refrigerator, obviously nervous. I remember when we went on vacation with our families, we also ate and drank something at night, smiling at him. They don't mention it often, but they were childhood friends, or rather their families were friends, so they knew each other quite well. That's right, I remember it too, he said, closing the refrigerator and taking out some snacks. Those were the days. When you grow up, you want to go back to those times when you were happy, he said, looking at the ceiling. You should be happy now, you have a beautiful and intelligent girlfriend, I say, it hurts to speak well of the Deity. Yes, I suppose so, she said with a half-hearted smile. By the way, I need help with a class. I don't know if you'd mind helping me. It'll only be once. I know you're busy with class activities. If that works for you, Monday at the library. He hesitated slightly, not wanting any trouble. Okay, Monday then. Great, Monday will be, he said, walking towards the exit. See you later. Damn, who put my romantic life on hard mode? Thought the raven-haired woman, having a bad feeling about everything. He went upstairs thinking about everything, the surprising request for help from the bi-colored one, but he was still thinking about the green-haired boy, what he was thinking and feeling. He hated all this, and the worst part was that he couldn't get him out of his head. It was the first time I'd ever wanted a date to end badly. Jealousy. The long, hard night continued to torment the raven-haired woman. The doubt and uncertainty surrounding several issues crowding her mind kept her from sleeping a wink. She was extremely restless. It was 1 p.m. and she heard nothing from the next room, implying that no one had arrived yet. What are they taking so long? It's already very late. If someone discovers them, they'll be in serious trouble. While clutching her pillow tightly, she lamented the fact that she really wanted to sleep and for the sunrise to arrive quickly, announcing a new day, but she couldn't, and it was annoying. Until the noise arrived, as it was late and everyone was in their rooms, it was easy to hear, finally the sound of the door opening, indicating that her friend had arrived at her room, but after a few seconds the banging of her door was heard, someone was calling her. "Yeah, Momo, are you awake?" said the friend after knocking on the door. And as if struck by lightning, he put on his pants and opened the door, seeing his friend with a sad expression, something that was rare for her. She got angry often, but Jirou was not someone who got sad. "Jirou, it's getting late, but did something happen?" she asked, intrigued by her friend's condition. "He rejected me," she said, as if that statement made her even sadder. She realized why she was sad. Apparently, she had confessed her feelings to the green-haired boy, but he hadn't reciprocated. She was sad for her friend. She couldn't leave her alone during this difficult time. When the Todoroki incident happened, she had been by her side the entire time, supporting her through that tough moment. The least she could do was be there for her. Since she hadn't been able to sleep, she didn't mind staying with her for a few hours, and she felt somewhat relieved. "Really? Come in," he said, opening the door and letting her in. "Thank you." Sitting on the bed. "What really happened?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "The date had been beautiful, we were having a good time, so I felt that maybe he liked my company, being with me, but it seems that he was just being nice. When we were saying goodbye, I told him about my feelings, and he told me that he wasn't ready yet, and that he doesn't want any relationship for now, and that he doesn't feel the same way." With tears running down her face. She felt bad for her friend. She really liked the green-haired boy. She'd had bad luck with love, all of them were idiots. She thought that being with someone as good as the green-haired boy excited her, and she felt bad for her. "I'm sorry, Kayaka, it's difficult, but who knows what the future holds. Maybe you'll find the ideal one for you. It must be hard. If you want, sleep here tonight, we can watch a movie and eat ice cream. What do you think?" he said, smiling at her. "Yes, I need to forget for a while." Wiping away her tears. "You're a great friend." Smiling at her with her eyes still wet. She also felt bad about the fact that she slept with the green-haired boy, that he was her ex will escape. She felt like a very bad person. Undoubtedly, if her friend found out, she would be furious and wouldn't want to see her again, which was logical. "Ah, what a shit," she thought, but it wasn't the time for that. She had to think about him now. "I also wanted to tell her about Todoroki, but I thought it better not to. Besides, I already knew what she was going to say, that she shouldn't go, but it's just an afternoon of studying, and he asked for my help. Nothing bad can happen, right?" Monday. The rain didn't stop. It was one of those days when staying in bed and finding some entertainment was mandatory. There she was, in the library with her childhood friend and lifelong platonic love. She didn't know what she was doing there, she hadn't realized the trouble she'd gotten herself into. If someone saw them, rumors would obviously circulate, and not just the hatred of the redeed, but of the entire UA. She wanted it to end as soon as possible. Also, in all this, he thought that it had been a while since he'd seen the green-haired boy. It was strange, as if something was missing. He had the desire to go see him at many points during the day, but he didn't know how or didn't want to bother him. Since when did he care about that? Of course he bothered him ever since they started that game. Bothering each other was what they did most. "You have to move this number here," he said, pointing to the notebook. "So that's how it is. Thanks," wrote the bi-colored one. "I remember when we created our stories as children, you wanted to make it very dramatic." Laughing. "I was just a girl back then, life is better without drama," she said seriously as she read. "Momo yaoi Rozu herself, thinking life is all sunshine and rainbows," she said with a smile. "I don't think it's like that either, but as long as everything can be avoided, all the better," he continued, his gaze fixed on his book. "You might be right, would you pass me the eraser?" she asked, hoping her friend would pass it to her. "Momo, it doesn't matter," she replied, extending her hand. Damn fate, they accidentally touched hands. A sensation surged in Momo's chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Thanks," he said, holding the eraser and returning to his notebook. "Damn it, I can't act like this. He only touched my hand. It's nothing important." It was nothing to him, and that's fine. She felt remorse. She couldn't believe how weak and childish she was. He already had a boyfriend and was very happy. He never thought about her, nor did he consider her a woman. Now her face was a mixture of seriousness and sadness. She didn't want to show weakness. She had to flee from that place as soon as possible. But suddenly he felt the impact of something heavy falling to the ground. A few meters away, on a shelf where a couple of books had fallen, was the green-haired boy on the floor, calming the pain caused by the fall. "Midoriya!" exclaimed the raven-haired girl, getting up from her seat with some concern. "Hi guys, still a little nervous, excuse my clumsiness, I tripped laughing." "Midoriya, what are you doing here?" said the bi-colored boy with his typical humor. "I needed some books," she said, quickly picking them up. "Carry on with what you were doing, excuse me again," she added, bowing slightly but glancing sideways at the raven-haired girl. "See you later," she said, speeding out of the place. The worry had taken hold of the raven-haired woman. How much had he seen? Even if nothing had actually happened, he might get the wrong idea. Besides, deep down, she didn't want him to think badly of her. The bi-colored boy looked at his friend's worried face, intrigued by such an attitude. He had never seen her like this, and even less so with Midoriya. "Are you okay?" I asked simply. "Why yes, I just got scared," laughing nervously. "Excuse me, I'm going to the bathroom." Getting up and going to the bathrooms. Still intrigued, but believing her, the bi-colored boy began to pack his things. That was enough for today. But he glanced at where the raven-haired girl was sitting. She had left her cell phone on the table, and just as he was about to pick it up to give it to her, the message tone sounded and the notification popped up, revealing a message from Midoriya. "Midoriya. I'll see you later in your room." What did that message mean, and since when was there so much trust? He was going to see more, but he heard her footsteps in the distance, quickly turning off the light and leaving him where he was. He was intrigued, but it wasn't the time to find out. "Aoi Rozu, I have to go," she said, getting up. "I have things to do. See you later." She left quickly. "That's strange," she said, watching in surprise as he left. "Well, I'm leaving too," she said, taking her phone and checking the message notification. "He wants to see me. I thought he was going to hate me for what he saw." I gathered my things and, with a smile, left the place, eager to see what would happen later. Fight. "Talk talk." "Come in," said the green-haired boy as he sat down next to his study table. "Excuse me," said the raven-haired woman as she walked in and closed the door. "I was surprised you sent me that message," she said, looking at him happily. He said, looking at the book he had been reading before he arrived. A little intrigued by the green-haired boy's attitude. "You should have told me you were going to the library, I could have gone with you," she said, still happy. "No thanks," she said with the same attitude. My patience was wearing thin. "Is something wrong?" "It bothers me to see the two of you alone," he said seriously, without taking his eyes off his book. The green-haired boy's simple but blunt reply created a tense atmosphere, but beyond that, the raven-haired girl was in check. What did that mean? Did that mean? And what would be the problem? "I don't see why it should bother you," he said with the seriousness the situation deserved. "DSK with some annoyance. Forget it, you're right." You could see his discomfort. "I have a better question for you, why did you reject Kayaka?" he said before moving a little closer. "And what would be the problem if I rejected her?" he said, closing his book. "Just answer why," the raven-haired woman questioned. "No, you wouldn't understand," he said, getting up and going to his bookshelf. "She's an amazing girl, and we said this would end when we find someone we truly love," she said seriously. "Precisely, when I truly love someone. Jirou is an incredible girl, but placing his book on his shelf, I don't love her, I don't even know her." She had a good point. It wasn't just about someone being cute. When you love someone it involves much more than just that. There are more things at stake than just physical appearance. Besides, the green-haired boy continued, turning his back on her, "I like someone else." After that clarification, the raven-haired girl had a duality of feelings. On one hand she was happy, she didn't know why, and on the other hand sad knowing that the green-haired boy was in love. She felt bad for feeling both ways, without understanding why. "I see," I replied with a forced smile. "So, should we stop?" After asking that, she saw the green-haired boy turn around to look at her, his gaze focused especially on her, as if the whole world didn't exist, but there she was, she with her confused expression, with her beautiful hair and her sculpted body. The green-haired boy did nothing but approach, with that determined look, each step more determined than the last. A slight blush could be seen in his eyes, something the raven-haired girl hadn't noticed. "Please," the green-haired man said, standing a few centimeters away from her. "Stay tonight, just the two of us," he said before gently taking the raven-haired woman's chin in his hand. With a soft and slow movement, he was able to direct the raven-haired woman's lips towards his own, starting again his ritual of passionate kisses. But the raven-haired girl could feel something different in this kiss. This time it was one that felt completely wonderful. Before, kisses were meant to ignite the flames of lust they shared, but this time, the warmth of the green-haired boy was felt. The kiss they were sharing was comfortable, incredible, hopeful. The next day. It was the rainy season. Not a day went by without the sky showering the earth with those drops of water, refreshing and bringing nostalgia to those who enjoyed these days. The green-haired boy and his best friend, the bi-colored one, were training at the gym, something that had surprised the green-haired boy, but he wasn't complaining about a good workout, and since his friend is part of the new Big Three along with him, it was a great opportunity. "Will you?" sighed the green-haired boy who had sat down on the gym bleachers. It's been a long time since we trained together, huh, Shadow? The bi-colored one, from what he had seen on the raven-haired girl's cell phone, was intrigued by the type of relationship between him and his childhood friend and why they kept it a secret from everyone. He knew them both, and they weren't the type to keep secrets. There's not much time left until the end of the academy. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to have a friendly battle with you in the future, throwing the water bottle at him. Thank you, receiving it and taking a sip. As he watched his friend drink, he devised a way to extract information from him without appearing to know anything, so he had an idea. Ah, sighed the bi-colored one tiredly. Is something wrong? He asked, puzzled. The truth is I think I'm regretting this, he said, looking at the ceiling. About? I asked, even more puzzled. I haven't told anyone what I'm about to tell you, but you're my friend, we don't have any secrets between us, right? Looking at him to see his reaction. Of course, you can trust me, she said, smiling at him. Is it about Kendo? That's right, I'm starting to feel like she's not what I'm looking for, she said, obviously lying. I thought we should separate, she said, feigning sadness. Oh, I'm sorry, said the green-haired boy, saddened by his friend. It must be hard to make a decision like that. The bicolor, seeing that his friend believed him, moved on to phase 2 of the plan. Besides, I'm falling in love with someone else, she said matter-of-factly. The green-haired boy, who was drinking from the bottle, froze when he heard this, besides feeling that something wasn't right and that it wasn't going to end well either. Can I ask who the freckled boy said immediately? It's complicated, it never would have occurred to me, I hadn't realized what a beautiful woman she is. I'm talking about the vice president, he said, glancing sideways at his friend. Shadow could see how, upon saying that, the freckled boy squeezed the water bottle tightly. It didn't break completely, but it was already wrinkled and damaged. You can't, he said seriously, his hair covering his eyes. Okay, a little more, why couldn't I? Does it bother you that I like it? I don't understand why. Before he could finish his sentence, the bi-colored boy felt a fist connect with his face. He immediately realized that it wasn't his quirk that had hit him, otherwise he would have flown several meters, but rather a normal punch from someone who was annoyed. You can't do that, that's not what a friend does and even less what a hero does, he said, standing up angrily. After saying this, he also received a punch from the bicolor, which caused a cut on his cheek, which began to bleed. It's not friendly to hide things either, tell me since when? He said angrily. The green-haired boy had realized Todoroki Shadow somehow knew his secret and his relationship with the class vice president. He didn't know how, but he knew. He couldn't escape the situation or make up any excuses. You know that, right? The freckled boy said seriously. I figured as much, since when? He said, sounding annoyed. It's none of your business, besides, what she and I have is our problem, take care of your girlfriend, he said, annoyed by how nosy his friend had become, touching his face and realizing he was bleeding. Now I understand you're using her to forget about Uraraka, aren't you? Don't give me that hero speech, you're doing something horrible too, said the bi-colored boy. Using her to feel special, even knowing how she felt, until you got a girlfriend and threw her away, is worse, she said, getting closer to him. Her annoyance was palpable. Shut up, you probably use her to satisfy your sexual urges. Since you couldn't sleep with Uraraka, you looked for another option. You're a bucking loser. Now he felt a blow that sent him flying towards the wall. That one hurt quite a bit, but not as much as the wound from those sharp words that the two of them said to each other. The green-haired boy watched as his best friend was sent flying. He was upset, but he didn't usually act like this, especially not with people he cared about. Was it true? Was he being a bad person? Standing motionless, lost in thought about everything that had happened, he didn't notice a column of ice approaching him, sending him flying towards the ceiling. It struck him hard, a personal fight they never imagined they'd have, a rift in their relationship that would be difficult to repair. Alert alert, unauthorized student fight in the gym area, Asawa needed on site. Discussion. We find ourselves in the raven-haired girl's room, where after that fight she had with him, and after having a meeting with the principal and some school authorities, the dark-haired girl was tending to some wounds she still had on her body. And done putting a bandage on his arm good as new, they sure do have tough training, he said, while putting the ethyl alcohol back on his shelf. That's what the green-haired and bi-colored boys told them, that they had overdone their training. This was obviously a lie they had made up to avoid punishment. They still got it, but if they said they had fought outside the limits of training, we could be talking about expulsion. So they said that without having agreed to it. It seemed that this was the only thing they would agree on for a long time. Thank you, he said while checking his arm, noticing that the raven-haired girl had done it perfectly. I see you have experience in this, he said, surprised. The mansion I grew up in was very boring sometimes, so I took to reading and learning how to do it, she said, sitting down across from him. Tell me, did they punish you? It's UA, it was obvious they'd give us a punishment, just 2 weeks of community service, because it was just training, but we went a little overboard, he said while smiling nervously. I knew the raven-haired girl was clever. The others might have believed them, but she probably realized it, and in that she was right. Is that all? She asked, intrigued. You two hit each other pretty hard. If we're talking about you and Shoto, that's not the typical training you'd have with your teammates, much less your best friend. Something happened, didn't it? And as he suspected, the raven-haired girl wouldn't buy that story. For better or for worse, she knew him quite well, she knew that she would realize, and that he wouldn't hit a comrade so hard unless it was by mutual consent or in an official battle. That was all training, he said seriously. It seems strange to me. What did you say to Shoto? She asked, more curious. What did I say to her? He thought, annoyed. That wasn't the question he wanted to hear. Why did she always seem to be defending him? He was to blame for getting angry and hitting her, but it wasn't entirely his fault. The bi-colored girl had angered him with what she said, even though she was right. Besides, he was the one who had started with his new feelings for the raven-haired girl. He was annoyed because she hadn't just fought for herself, but had gotten even more upset by talking about her as if she were a toy. And she still doubted him. I didn't say anything to him, he said in an annoyed tone. I already knew something had happened, she said triumphantly. PSK, fine if I pass, that idiot said unpleasant things to me, he said, making his annoyance increase. What did he tell you? He asked, clearly worried. It's none of your business, she said, remembering that she was a vital part of the fight, things between him and me. I understand now man's code, she said, defeated. Although I don't think he was entirely to blame. You must have done something too, she added, raising an eyebrow. Why do you say that? He said, looking at her seriously. Shoto isn't one to get angry for no reason, go on, tell me. Why does she keep worrying about him? The green-haired boy thought, annoyed. There was no way around it. The raven-haired girl was thinking about him. She seemed to be accusing him of everything, even though he was the one who said horrible things. But what bothered him most was that she wasn't lying. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but what bothered him more was that it seemed like he was the villain of the story, that he was the one who had to listen to lectures and no one else. But also that she kept thinking about him, worrying, despite everything. On one hand I didn't blame her, a love from childhood was more important than a hex toy of a few months like him, it was obvious who she would choose. I didn't say anything to your childhood friend, he started to fight, why would it seem like you're defending him? He said angrily. I'm not defending him, since they're both guilty, I just want to know and. Don't lie, you still care about him, despite everything that happened, you still care, you think about him, he could be killing people, and you would still defend him, she said, raising her voice. That's a lie and you know it, you're acting strange today, you shouldn't take what I said to heart, she said, trying to calm him down. He knows about us everything, he said seriously. The raven-haired girl's heart froze. Someone else knew their secret, the one they had kept so well hidden. They knew they had been having hex, and that they had done it behind everyone's back. What she thought most was that if someone else found out, and she was afraid that this information would spread throughout UA, they would be tainted for life. Expulsion would be the least punishment they would receive. Their family name would be tarnished, and their dreams of being heroes would end. Damn it, she said, getting annoyed. Did you tell him? She asked, irritated. No, he found out somehow, I couldn't escape, so I confessed to him, he said seriously. Just him, she said thoughtfully. I'm sorry your dear Shoto knows, but he won't say anything, I promise, she said. It's not just because of him, our present and future would be ruined, the raven-haired woman said firmly. That won't happen, calm down. It bothers you too that he knows, doesn't it? The boy asked. Huh? You're not listening to me, are you? The girl retorted. If there was any possibility for you to stay with him, now those possibilities are gone and that bothers you. He used you until he got a girlfriend, and despite all that you still defend him and worry about him. It's obvious you still love him, and I get all the blame, he said angrily. The raven-haired girl was surprised by the green-haired boy's anger, as well as by the words he was saying. Were they true? Did she still feel that way about the bi-colored boy? No, she had forgotten him. Even though it had hurt, she had managed to move on, but there was a green-haired boy in front of her, annoyed. Maybe he was right. She hadn't realized that he was also a person with feelings. When you needed someone, I was there for you. I was there when you cried, when you wanted to forget, when you wanted to escape this world for a moment. I was there, no one else. He pushed you aside from the very beginning. And you know what else? I defended you. That's why I hit him, because he has no right to talk to you like you're a toy for his amusement. From that moment on, he stopped being my friend, because no one should do that to anyone. What we have is different because it's consensual, but I started to value you, to love you for who you are, and you're not anyone's toy, not mine or anyone else's. So, today I'm ending all this. We won't see each other in secret anymore. We'll be the friends we were and no one else will get hurt. He stood up angrily. Izuku, I trying to reach him. I'm Midoriya, Izuku is what those who value and truly love me call me. Goodbye Yaoi Rozu, he said before leaving and closing the door. Silence, cruel and dark silence, where it hadn't happened in her room for a long time, but it reappeared, making her see how alone she was, how much more alone she felt. Seeing that back that promised never to return made her feel small, weak, fragile, but something didn't want her to forget him, to move on with her life. She had been a coward her whole life, but not this time. She wanted her best friend back, someone with whom she had shared laughter, tears, stories, starry nights. She valued that more than just Hex. She began to cherish every moment she spent with him. It was gold to her, but she had ruined it again. But it wasn't the end. She was going to fight now, for the one she loved most. She wasn't going to run away again. This was not the end, I still had a chance. Sorry. The months passed, that first day of classes seemed far away in time, those exams and internships had borne fruit in them, making them heroes prepared to go out into the world and defend it. There were only a few weeks left until graduation, with most of them already confirmed to graduate and others who needed a few more points to reach this long-awaited diploma that would certify them as professional heroes. But many were not yet ready for goodbye. The future will always be uncertain. Perhaps many will take separate paths, perhaps some will never see each other again, others will work together at the same agency. The possibilities were many, but it all ended in the same thing: goodbye. The one who feared that the most was the raven-haired girl. She had already achieved the grades that mathematically made her deserving of the top academic positions in her class, or most likely the top spot. Even so, she continued to help her classmates who still needed to pass and continued to strive in class, but at this moment she had other plans. Plans with the color green. In class. Congratulations to those who passed this final stage, your diplomas are guaranteed, Professor Ozawa told his class. And for those who still need to pass, don't worry, you'll have a makeup exam in a week. I hope you can pass. The class had matured. They understood that they could no longer take everything lightly. Despite being young, they understood that when they went outside, they had to take the appropriate seriousness, but even so, they were still young dreamers. For graduation in 2 weeks, you can invite your family and friends. Try to let me know the number of your guests in advance. We have limited space. You can come as a couple or alone, but I don't really care. As long as you all show up and pick up your diplomas, my job is done. He observed how his class was serious and silent. Sometimes I miss how rowdy you all were. Well, let's finish today's class. In the bedrooms. The raven-haired girl was in her bedroom thinking about the events that were about to happen. Now that her academic success was secured, she had to think a lot about how she was going to get close to the green-haired boy again. In the last time since they last saw each other, they didn't speak to each other. Every day she observed that smile, that determination that characterizes him, and the will to live, wanting to be a hero who saves everyone. But he had made sure not to have any kind of relationship with her. To say they were classmates was too much to describe their relationship. Lying in bed staring at the ceiling, she thought about everything she had to do to be with him again. Damn it, he said listlessly, what should I do? He muttered under his breath. The ideas gradually wore down, being eliminated according to the probability of each one, each with a worse result than the other, but all with the same destiny, permanent rejection. But there was a glimmer of hope. She saw it that way, she wanted to feel it that way, she didn't want to give up on him. The only way to get close to him again was go to the prom together. She quickly got up from her enormous bed and walked around the room, thinking about what would be the best option, the best choice of words, and the best time. It wasn't going to be easy for her, but she had to achieve it. As they say, hope is the last thing to die. Aizu, she coughed, clearing her throat. Midoriya, I know we haven't talked in a while. No, it started off very badly, she thought as she walked around her room. It would be bad to go to graduation alone, most of them don't have their partners, and no, it also started badly giving up. The raven-haired woman threw herself back onto her bed, defeated. She knew it was strange. They hadn't spoken in months, and he was going to appear out of nowhere, asking her to go with him to graduation, after their last conversation was about never seeing each other again, beyond being her classmate, obviously. What's the point of this? She thought. Shouldn't she give up? It was 90% certain that the green-haired boy would reject her, and with good reason. But the idea of not going with him saddened her, perhaps the last time they would be together, going out into the world, perhaps to other countries, taking other paths, she wasn't going to waste her opportunity, perhaps the only one she had. Besides, she loved the green-haired boy. And I had to apologize to him, for everything. Yes, it had been hard for him to understand and accept it, but there he was, fighting against the odds. As someone told him, when there's a 1% chance, you should have 99% faith. Although it might sound very exaggerated. I should sleep, maybe in the next few days I'll have a chance to do it right. She untied her hair so she could sleep. She didn't mind sleeping with her hair loose, even though it was a lot of work on long cold nights, and it also brought back sweet memories. Just as she was getting ready to go to sleep, she felt a knock on her door. Who could it be at this hour? He wondered. I'm coming. Thinking it was one of her friends asking her for something or wanting to be with her, she incredulously went to the door, opening it slowly. Do you know what time it is? She was interrupted by surprise when she saw who had knocked on the door. Her prayers had reached the highest heavens, her wishes were heard by the entire universe, and she had been given the opportunity she had longed for. Sorry for the hour, said the green-haired boy, but I need to ask you something. Repentance. The night was perfect, just as the night required, a special night where memories and anecdotes will be on full display, where there will be many goodbyes, tears, hugs, and many loose ends tied up. The main hall was full, packed with people from the academy, as well as those from outside it, family members, reporters, public figures, accompanying the graduates on their special night. It was news across the country. The new UA graduates, the heroes of the future, will become reality. Flashes flooded the entrance. The students had to walk across a carpet that led to the grand hall where the culminating celebration would take place. Each guest walked down the carpet, in some cases causing more flashes than others depending on its popularity. Reporter. There we see the couple Todoroki Shoto and Itsuki Kendo, who recently made their relationship official to the world. The couple entered gallantly, dressed with great class and elegance, greeting everyone with their signature smiles, which was to be expected. One of the big three, the son of the #1 student and one of the top graduates of the entire UA, the media frenzy surrounding these two was immense. Reporter. But the real question is, where are they? Why haven't they arrived yet? The one everyone's talking about is the #1 hero of the future. People and reporters looked puzzled. The time to begin the ceremony was approaching, and neither of them had appeared. Reporter. Look, pointing to the street, there's a limousine arriving, who could it be? It could be. The cameras were ready, people waited expectantly to see who it was, and Todoroki, upon hearing the shouts, looked seriously at the luxury car that was positioning itself on the street at the beginning of the carpet. The door opened, revealing a girl with black hair and wearing a red dress. The word elegant didn't even begin to describe her. Then behind him was a man with green hair, wearing a suit with a white shirt and black tie, and a tailored jacket. Reporter. Just as we expected, if it isn't the two best students at UA, a young man with a future that everyone expects to be bright, accompanied by the smartest student of all the graduates, in addition to being a great heroine, she commented euphorically looking at the camera. Momo Yaoi Rozu and Midoriya Izuku. A few nights earlier. Where we left off in the previous chapter. Come with me to graduation, the green-haired boy said seriously, outside the room. At this point, Momo didn't know if she was in the world of dreams. The situation was so sudden that she couldn't believe it. She thought she was sleeping, but no, reality was calling her, and it was time to act. Although she had been expecting it for a long time, that at least the green-haired boy would speak to her, she didn't expect him to ask her to accompany him on the most important night of her life. If it was a joke, it was a tasteless one. What do you mean? The raven-haired woman said incredulously. You haven't spoken to me in ages, and then suddenly it's this late at night. Are you asking me this? If this is a joke. It's not a joke, the green-haired boy quickly interrupted. No, it's not, he said with the seriousness that the situation required. The raven-haired woman stared in disbelief, but she knew better than to. She didn't want to escape the situation, even though her mind told her to close the door, she knew she couldn't do it. The heart sometimes wants to do the opposite. Come on in, moving and letting the green-haired boy pass. She wanted to hear everything her partner and former lover had to say. If this was a chance to make everything that happened real from here on out, she wanted to take it and make everything right now. Excuse me, said the green-haired man, it's been a long time since I've been here, looking around the room and sitting down at the end of the bed. That comment made the dark-haired woman blush, reminding her of what had happened, but she cleared her throat and returned to the seriousness of the situation. Okay, I'm listening, taking a chair and sitting down in front of him, crossing her legs and staring at him. Well, where to begin? Izuku smiled. I'm sorry to be so direct, and I know this will seem strange, but I never forgot about you, he said, blushing slightly and looking to the side. The raven-haired woman was surprised to hear this. Hadn't he forgotten about her? But he didn't speak to her, much less look at her. How could he say that? You're lying, he said, clearly annoyed. I know, and I understand why you're angry. I really wanted to, but I can't, I couldn't, and I'm sure I never will. Everything that happened between us hurt me. I was really starting to like you, he said, making the raven-haired girl blush and less defensive. But it's also true that I was using you, trying to fill a void I wanted to fill with someone else. Well, you know the story. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. What kind of hero would do that? Or rather, what kind of human being would play with people's hearts like that? I wanted to forget you, forget everything, but I can't. The raven-haired girl was lost. Everything she had fought for was coming true. The green-haired boy returning to her and him realizing his feelings. But like the green-haired boy, she too was sorry for everything that happened because she too had made a mistake and made him suffer. She too was going to apologize, but the green-haired boy continued. I know it's difficult, it was difficult for both of us. But if you forgive me for everything, however long it takes you to do this, I'd like to, you know. I'm looking around nervously. The raven-haired girl couldn't help but smile at this. She missed those attitudes of the green-haired boy when he got nervous about everything, she really missed him a lot. I must also apologize, said the raven-haired woman. I hurt you too, and I used you in many ways. I put you through many difficult times, and despite defending myself and fighting for me, all I did was push you away and cast you aside in my life and my heart. I couldn't forget you either, not for a second. To be honest, it hurt me that you didn't speak to me, but listening to you now, I think I should have been patient and understood that you needed your time, she said, smiling, her eyes shining. I sincerely waited for this moment. I wanted to apologize for everything, and she began, tears welling in her eyes. Heaven was kind enough to give them this moment, thinking it would never come. There they were, the two of them, sorting out their differences and everything the past had left behind. Now it was time to live in the present and look towards the future. No problem, the green-haired boy said, getting up and hugging her. We all make mistakes. We had the courage to realize it and apologize. That's what heroes do too. Thank you, Izuku, hugging him tightly. I know it's a lot to ask, but would you like to go with me too? She couldn't let the green-haired boy finish, knowing what he was going to say, as if their minds and hearts were connected. What she had prayed for so much had finally come true. Yes, said the raven-haired girl with tears in her eyes, a tender and simple smile with her head pressed against the green-haired boy's chest. I want to go with you. Home. Outside it was madness. The paparazzi and the people who came to see the heroes were making a huge racket outside, worthy of the importance of the event that was happening that night. The little apprentices they once were became great prospects for heroes. The hall was immense, sophisticated, full of special decorations and a dance floor in the center. The waiters came and went bringing dishes of the highest range, something that for some was new. Our couple was sitting at their table, next to some of their classmates. Momo was chatting with her classmates, while Izuku, for his part, was looking at the postcard with a smile. He was where he was meant to be, with whom he was meant to be. Bakugo. Hey nerd sitting next to him. Izuku. I'm, Bakugo Mirandolo. Bakugo. Why are you with the raven-haired girl again? Looking towards where she was and then back at the green-haired boy. Until a day ago, I didn't exist for you. Izuku. Wow, Bakugo worrying about his childhood friend. An annoyed blush spread across the blonde man's face. Bakugo. Anyway, what are you up to? If your plan is to crush Shoto's pride, you're doing a great job. He keeps glancing at them out of the corner of his eye, he said as they spoke slowly and in each other's ears, due to the sound of the music. And it was true, every now and then the Redeed would check on his rival. He knew very well why he was like this, but if he admitted it, everything he had built over the years would crumble. He had to maintain his composure, but the truth was he was dying inside seeing the happiness of the two of them. Izuku. I'm not doing this for him, it's for me. I decided to think more carefully about my feelings and what I want now. Besides, we all make mistakes, right? The blonde man heard those words and took them to heart. It was difficult to seek and find forgiveness from someone whose life he had once made a living hell, but he knew that if he wanted to be a hero, he had to leave those sins behind. Life had taken many turns, even bringing them here. Bakugo. TCH leaning back in his chair with his hands in his pockets. I know about sinning, now tell me, how did you get them to come together? Izuku. Smiling and making the silent sign with his finger, it is said the sinner not the sin. Bakugo. Staring at him. You probably cried for 30 minutes. Izuku. You never change, do you? The night continued its course. After a speech made by each teacher of the academy, the moment arrived to receive the diploma, where each of them came forward to receive it and received the corresponding greeting, from the first to the last, thus closing the most important moment of the night. Then the lights went out and the dance floor came on, making everyone present start to move a little, some with their partners, others well, they liked to dance alone. Izuku went out in search of the raven-haired girl who had left a few moments before. He knew she was around there. As he walked, he continued to be more and more amazed by the architecture of the place. Suddenly, from the other side of the hallway, Shoto was also coming in the opposite direction. They both noticed it. They didn't know if it was by chance or arranged by someone, but they knew it wasn't a good time for either of them. It felt like minutes and an endless hallway where discomfort took hold and the two stared intently at each other. A bomb was about to explode, just a spark was needed. They didn't say anything to each other, they passed by like a gust of wind, they couldn't ruin the night, they knew that if they did anything everything it meant would be for nothing, but probably in another circumstance the story was going to be different. Izuku. Damn it, what the hell should I do? He thought as he walked, confused. He continued walking until he found the raven-haired girl, and he found her outside in a kind of garden, leaning against a column while looking at the stars. Izuku. Beautiful night, isn't it? He said as he leaned back against the column, a little ways away from the girl. Momo. That's right, beautiful while looking at the sky, I wish it were eternal. Izuku. Yes, it's hard to say goodbye to everyone to everything, he said while looking melancholically at the sky, but everything comes to an end, doesn't it? Momo. I wasn't just referring to that while quickly looking at the green-haired boy, and not everything necessarily has to end. Izuku. Looking at her in surprise, letting out a small smile, true, but some things end sooner or later, the academy, life. Momo. Us. Interrupting him and looking him in the eyes. Izuku. Even more surprised, let's enjoy it tonight, we'll see about it later. Momo. You still don't trust me, do you? She looks sadly at the floor, ashamed. Izuku. I didn't say that, I told you everything I had to say, you know what I think, it's just no, it's hard to forget everything that happened so quickly, it's not that I'm still angry or upset, the green-haired boy corrected, I just wanted to enjoy it tonight. Momo. Shaking her head in denial, what am I saying? You're right, it's not the time to think about that, we were clear, we just have to wait a little longer, moving closer to the green-haired boy. Izuku. Approaching her, I like that idea, but there's something that can't wait any longer. Momo. I think I know what it could be, moving closer to her mouth. The kiss sealed that magical night where they left everything behind. Even knowing there were things to improve, they wanted to move forward, for themselves and because of themselves. Knowing that difficulties and challenges would come, but they knew that together they could do anything they set their minds to. Momo. Pulling away from the kiss, I just had an idea, what will you do after this? I mean, maybe an agency? Izuku. I have some offers, Sir Night-Eye, Maruko, and Ever himself, why the question? Momo. I was thinking, I don't know, the crazy idea of after making everything official, of living together. Izuku. What? He looked surprised at her proposal. Momo. It's an idea, tell me if it's silly and we'll forget about it, she laughed nervously. Izuku. You know what, it's an excellent idea. Momo. Really? Opening her eyes happily. Izuku. I don't think there are any problems if we end up being boyfriends, and if afterwards we want to, swallowing nervously, start a family. Momo. Interrupting excitedly, yes. That's what I want, realizing and clearing her throat, I mean it would all be more practical. The silence fell between them, but they laughed when they remembered the conversation. Living together. They had only lived with their parents their whole lives. They didn't know what it was like to live with someone else, but it was worth a try. They couldn't imagine themselves without each other. They wanted a life together, doing what they had dreamed of their whole lives. Being heroes and rescuing anyone in need, but also having a family and enjoying stability with the person they loved. From a mistake, beautiful accidents can be born that will last over time. End of part 1. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching, if you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day, bye.